Thousands take to the streets of Belém to demand stronger action on global warming at the UN Climate Summit in Brazil. And a star-studded audience for Pope Leo as he hosts Hollywood celebrities at the Vatican, including Cate Blanchett and director Spike Lee. Thousands of people marched in Mexico City to protest about increasing violence and insecurity and against the government of President Claudia Sheinbaum. Images showed some protesters clashing with security forces outside the National Palace. The rally was organized by some Gen Z youth groups. They also attracted support from organizations angry about the recent killings of an outspoken and anti-crime mayor. The government claims Saturday's march was backed by a paid digital campaign.
The UK Home Secretary shares more details on her plans to tighten Britain's asylum system.
I can see illegal migration is tearing our country apart. It is dividing communities.
Ecuador's president announces the arrest of a top drug gang leader as the country votes on measures to help combat organised crime. One of Donald Trump's staunchest allies, Marjorie Taylor Greene, accuses the president of putting her life in danger after he branded her a traitor for supporting the release of the Epstein files. As communities in Wales recover from severe flooding, cold Arctic air is set to sweep across the UK. Iranian authorities have launched cloud seeding operations to induce rainfall as the country faces its worst drought in decades. The capital has seen its lowest rainfall in a century, with the president warning that Tehran might need evacuating if rain doesn't arrive before last winter. Last year, Iran announced it had developed its own technology for the practice. Well, with more on this, I'm joined by Edward Grisbeard. He's the Associate Professor in Atmospheric Physics at Imperial College London. Thank you very much for joining us here on the programme. First of all, for those who aren't familiar with cloud seeding, how does it work?
So the idea behind cloud seeding is that you could use something like salt or silver iodide, and you could spray it into clouds. And if the clouds are the right type, if they're on the edge of raining already, then you could induce more rain in those clouds. So you could increase the amount of rain in a specific region.
And why has Iran chosen to do this? How much of a difference could it make?
So one of the problems or kind of issues with cloud seeding is it's very difficult to show it works. That once you've modified a cloud and you were looking for clouds that were already on the edge of raining, you don't know whether it was going to have rained anyway. So it's quite difficult to show whether it kind of produces a long-term increase in the amount of rain you get. On the other hand, it's generally thought to be relatively cheap. And if you're in a situation where you have a significant drought, as is the case in Iran, then you might be willing to try things even if they have a relatively low chance of being able to work.
So it seems to be cost effective. What's the evidence like in terms of how much of an impact this could have on improving the situation?
So it's really difficult to say. I mean, say it's cost effective. I mean, it's cheap whether or not it works. But ultimately, it's very difficult to know how much rain it would create. There have been some programs in other areas that have tried to produce rain. But again, it's something that's very difficult to show that it can produce a long-term or a significant change in the amount of rain in any particular region.
And this kind of technology has been used in other countries. How effective has it been in those places?
Yeah, so again, it's been used in some cases occasionally to try and increase the amount of snow, for example. And typically it gets used partly because even if the kind of chance of it working is small, it was relatively cheap. So you haven't kind of lost a lot if you've tried to do it. Ultimately, it really matters on the kinds of clouds you get. Most clouds are not susceptible to cloud seeding. You need ones that are just on the edge of raining already. And that's one of the reasons why it's so difficult to know whether it works. Those clouds might rain anyway, even if you don't do any cloud seeding.
Have any alternative methods been looked into that could be a solution to this?
It's difficult to say. I'm not so familiar with the kind of plans in Iran at the moment. Ultimately, I guess Iran is suffering significant water shortages. And when you're in that kind of situation, I guess you want to try anything you can to try and increase the amount of rainfall.
And we know that climate change is a big factor in all of this. How much has that impacted on the climate in Iran and what's happening there?
So Iran is already an area that is generally relatively hot. There's a large kind of variation in the amount of rain you get, but many regions of Iran are very dry. And generally under climate change, we're expecting regions that are already dry to get drier. But we might also expect to see increases in the amount of extreme rain as well. And so there have been some cases of kind of increased flooding events in Iran and the Middle East in general as well.
Edward Grisbeard, really appreciate you coming on the programme. Thank you very much.
No problem.